During the Nazi occupation of Norway, only one political party was allowed. That was the Nasjonal Samling, which means National Assembly, but I shall refer to it as the NS. Its leader was Vidkung Quisling, whose surname was to become synonymous of that of traitor. The party was officially established on the 17th of May 1933. Its ideology was one of being mainly nationalist with strong fascist overtones. Some of its leaders had previously been active in the Conservative Party, while Quisling himself had been a minister for the Peasants Party. Like similar pseudo-populist parties at that time and today, it presented itself as an alternative to other bourgeois parties. In the 1933 general election, it got less than 1.8% of the national vote, and in 1936, it did even worse, with 1.4%. Now, the main reason I think that people would support parties like the NS was fear of communism and dissatisfaction with the economic crisis or handling of the economic crisis of the 1930s, as well as the ideas of unity and comradeship and everybody together that they offered. In other countries, of course, such as Germany, the idea of dressing up in a uniform and doing the salutes and all the rest of it, that must have been quite appealing to young people. Here we can see Quisling with other party members in the mid-1930s. I get the impression that despite the uniform ban in Norway, they are trying to copy the German Nazis. However, in this picture, from a party outing around the same time, they're wearing normal clothes. It's uncertain to what extent one can refer to the NS as a fascist or a nationalist socialist party before the war. During the war, it became more common to profess National Socialism following the German pattern. Now, from the foundation, the NS regarded the Soviet Union and communism as its greatest opponent, even though Vidkung Quisling himself may have had certain communist leanings in the 1920s, although he denied it later. Although it's not unusual to see people switch from once being communist to going over to the Nazis. There's a number of people who did that, and indeed in East Germany, there were those who went from the Nazis to being a communist. And so I even here today in modern day Poland, there are people who are now supporters of the far right who were communist officials. Like other fascist parties, the NS was socially conservative, very nationalist, and only socialist, inasmuch as that it opposed big business, which it claimed was destroying peasant societies in Norway. This is another feature of the far right, whereas it claims it's opposed to communism, at the same time it wants to get rid of big businesses, although usually it doesn't want to get rid of the smaller ones, although of course that is what often happens. The NS followed a leader principle of one strong man making the decisions in a corporate state, somewhat like that Mussolini did in Italy. Indeed, Mussolini was the forefather of them all, and he was the basis for all sorts of fascist regimes. The party became racist after 1936, but it was not a major issue as it was the Nazi Party, for example. However, some in the party leadership wanted a radical solution to what they called the Jewish question. Given that there were no more than 2,000 Jews in the country, this really was clasping at straws, trying to find an enemy. This photograph shows anti-Semitic graffiti put up on a shop window in Oslo in 1941. What it says is the following: "The Jew parasite got us on the 9th of April. The 9th of April, of course, being the date of the German invasion, and therefore the author of this is blaming the Jews for the German invasion. I understand. Maybe he thinks that it was an invasion by Jews. Unable to explain that one. And it goes on to say further on the right-hand side, our right-hand side, Palestine calls all Jews. We can't stand them here in Norway any longer. 778 Jews were deported from Norway during the occupation, of whom only 34 survived. Now, one thing about fascists is that they do like their symbols. Mussolini's fascists didn't really catch on, but versions of the crooked cross meant to represent the sun, or maybe the rising sun, did, and these symbols continue to be used to this day. In the case of the NS, the symbol looked like this. The party flag is a Nordic cross flag, yellow cross on a red background. Another thing fascists like to do is to dress up and parade around like soldiers. This was not possible in Norway as political uniforms were banned, but this ban was lifted in 1940 during the Nazi occupation. On the 25th of September 1940, Nazi German governor, the Reichskommissar Josef Terboven, declared the NS as the country's only legal party. The party uniform was green with a military-style hat, and this is what it looked like according to the 1944 NS yearbook. Indeed, it does look somewhat similar to something in the Soviet Union. Other party organizations also had their uniforms, such as the NS version of the SA, which was called the Heerden, the Labour Service, and Quisling's version of the SS, called the Fördergarden, who wore dark blue uniforms. I need to point out that this is Quisling's guard. It's nothing to do with the Norwegian SS, which fought for Nazi Germany on the Eastern Front. Here we can see Quisling inspecting the Fördergarden. There was also a youth organization, a women's organization, a farmers organization, a trade union organization, a student organization, and more, some of which had their own uniforms as well. Another thing fascists like to do is to give the Nazi salute, although modern day neo-Nazis like to pretend it's not the Hitler salute, but it's what they call the Roman salute. And what the differences are, well, it seems the same to me. In this photograph from 1941, we can see some people in the street in Trondheim giving the salute to Quisling. But do note that not everybody is doing the same thing. Another thing needs to be pointed out about giving the salute in the street in conditions like this is that people could be frightened not to do it, so that something could happen to them. They could end up being arrested. Now, considering that it got such little support in the pre-war elections, how did it manage to reach 44,000 members by 1943? The answer is probably that many joined for social or economic advancement. Now, the Nazi Party in Germany, for example, was very corrupt, and they looked after their own. And the only way to progress further, if you wanted your business to get contracts or something like that, then you had to be a member of the party. So that is to be understood. And also people might want a job, and if the jobs are just jobs for the boys or the girls, depending on what it is, then you might have to join the party. Others may have liked the idea of dressing up and parading around in a uniform. Still others may have joined because they thought the Germans would win the war, or because they thought that the NS could increase the Norwegians' influence on the political government during the German occupation. Now, I need to point out that I think this is a very good reason to actually join something like this. For example, during communist times, although I was a hardcore anti-communist myself, I argued that people should join the Communist Party because that way they may be able to influence it to change for the better. So therefore, I would understand that. I would also understand if somebody joined the Nazi Party in Germany in the 1940s, because that may have been able to get some influence, even in from the mid-30s in the case of Germany. Many people would also join the NS because friends or family were already members, and so they sort of just brought them in, and for a mixture of all the reasons that I have given. Of course, Nazi Germany lost the war. It was still occupying Norway at the end of the war, and Norway was liberated only with the total collapse of the Nazi regime. After the war, there was a major purge in Norway, which lasted until August 1948. Several thousand people were tried and convicted of crimes committed during the Nazi occupation, which led to 40 death sentences, and the death sentence was reintroduced specially to deal with these criminals. There was no death sentence in Norway before World War II. The first to be shot was Vidkung Quisling, and I think it's fair to say that his party died with him. So I hope you found that brief introduction to the NS interesting, and I upload videos every Friday at 8 in the evening, and I sometimes upload videos at other times as well. So when I say 8 in the evening, it's 8 in the evening Central European time. That, I believe, is, for example, if you're in Los Angeles, that's 11 in the morning, or if you're in London, it's 7 in the evening. So please ring that bell and press subscribe, and I shall continue to put more videos up. All the best from me. Thank you.